Hi, friends, and welcome to Only Green. As a true pioneer in India, Sumer Verma tends to raise awareness of the ocean by showing the beauty of biodiversity. Considered the first underwater photographer and cinematographer in India, Sumer also works as the managing partner at Lacadives India, the country's first dive center. Welcome, Sumer, to Only Green.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Abhi.
Okay, I think you started diving as a passion very early in your life. Can you tell us a brief about how you got initiated into this love for oceans, diving, and underwater photography?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I wouldn't say so early in life. I started diving when I was 21 years old.
Okay,
So, in retrospect now, I see so many kids starting at the age of 12, 13, 14, and so that is nice and early. 21 is quite old, to be honest. But yeah, so that's when I started. I went for a vacation, loved the activity, loved the ocean, loved the clarity, loved the marine life, loved island life. And that one course and 1 week way back then did definitely alter
that
my
is at
life.
that is at Andamans,
That was in Lakshadweep.
Lakshadweep. Okay,
Yeah, yeah. So that was in 1997, and we Lacadives was based in Lakshadweep all the way up to 2010, and then we've been in Andaman since 2010, since present day. So 95 to 2010 in Lakshadweep, 2010 to 22 so far in Andaman. So it's coming to equal time in both places. So all the early years was very much spent in Lakshadweep, and of course, totally fell in love with the clear Indian Ocean and all the marine life. It was just a dream and a treat. And I definitely decided that I'm going to persevere and pursue this hobby. And then the fact that it became a profession later, and then after that, underwater photography happened is all good fate, good chance.
okay. This underwater photography, you being the first person to do underwater photography in India, how did you pick the tips and tricks of this trade? Maybe a totally new field way back in the early 2000s, I believe.
Yeah,
Uh,
I mean, definitely it was that very early back then. I don't think I was the first underwater photographer, to be honest. I maybe one or two articles carried the line like that. And I think maybe you can say first underwater photographer who a lot of people talk about or interviews come, and therefore underwater photography as an art form gets spoken about. But there were surely photographers before me experimenting in India. And so I don't take credit to be the first, but definitely one of the early ones who started spending a lot of time in the water with professional cameras and housings trying to go. So, in those early days, as I said, the water was so clear, full of marine life, and such beautiful feelings used to come being in the ocean that one wanted to capture that and share that experience with others, family members, and friends. And others also, because people in Bombay didn't know what we were experiencing, even though Lakshadweep is so nearby, part of India, and all that. And irony, 20 years later today still the same case ki again you ask somebody today what is manta ray he won't know nothing. So the awareness about marine life in India that way is pretty low now. Of course it's growing a lot. There are many recreational scuba divers, but at that time it was very nascent, and it was purely out of fascination with the beauty and wanting to share it that we got into underwater photography. And yes, it was a lot of trial and error, a lot of experimenting. There were a few blogs available on the internet where some basic information was available about the rules of underwater photography, the science of light, refraction, and certain basic pointers to follow. And one used those tools to help along the way, and a lot of practice, self practice was the way forward at that time. Yeah.
so there was no formal education for this, formal
No,
training for
there's
this.
no formal education for underwater photography as such. Even today, there's no formal education for professional underwater photography. There are courses which are offered along with recreational scuba diving where people can learn the basics of using underwater photography equipment underwater, but certainly not for the other fields like fashion, commercial, feature film, using cinema cameras and all that. There's no course on all for this. You have to read, you have to learn, you have to practice, and you have to keep pushing your skill set till you reach a high level or ability to execute and confidence in the ability to execute. So yeah, it's taken time. I started when I was 21. I'm 47 today, so it's taken 25 years of my time, a lot of
Okay,
dedication in that time to reach a level and standard.
okay. You also are connected or you are associated with the film and ad worlds.
Yeah.
Can you throw some light on the work that you do there and the satisfaction of turning a passion into a profession?
Yeah, I mean, thank you. That's a great question. I'd love to talk about that. See, when I started underwater photography, I started with wildlife and nature, right? Because my background was in scuba diving and marine conservation, and that is still my first passion. And what most passionate about is shooting marine life in the ocean and spreading awareness and conservation. But one has to, since I decided that I love underwater photography, it has to become my career and my profession. So I'm not forced to pursue it only as a hobby. I would like to do it as a full-time profession. So then the challenge came, okay, how do you make money out of underwater photography? With the wildlife stuff, you can do some kind of fine art prints, and I have done exhibitions. You can make documentaries. I have done. They've won a national award also. But what I realized is in the underwater wildlife space is limited scope to make money. And then also I have a passion for filmmaking. I had joined Prahlad Kakkar before scuba diving to learn ad filmmaking. I was an assistant with him over there. So obviously, one knew about the idea and the prospect of doing commercial underwater cinematography for feature films. That is all script driven. Some there's an act, some a car falls off a bridge. It has to be picturized from underwater. Sometimes there's a fight going on. There's a drowning sequence. Somebody's been thrown off a boat. Either way, there are n number of script driven reasons by which an underwater sequence has to be shot. So to be able to have enough skill sets that the producers will trust you, give you the job, and then you're able to execute the job, obviously was a great challenge. It took many, many years of struggling on the outskirts to get the opportunity, to get the job, to be given a break. Otherwise, I felt I am ready with the skill sets, but I was not getting breaks. So after I got my first break, I did a film with Bharat Bala called Marian, starring Dhanush, a South film, which had a lot of extensive underwater sequencing, which was shot in the Andamans, in Rameshwaram, parts in a swimming pool. And I think that was my first opportunity and break to do a feature film sequence. And touch wood, since then, it's been good, going well. I've gone from strength to strength. I just recently finished shooting with Rajamouli sir for RRR, a lovely
Oh,
sequence, which is now going to come out next week. And hopefully that will generate a lot of eyeballs. So yeah, in the meantime, I've done a lot of work between feature film, web series for Amazon, Netflix, and all the industries, whether it's Bollywood or whether I've done even a Hollywood film in Malaysia called Eden, and then worked extensively with Hyderabad, Tamil, and Telugu film industries. Worked with the great Mohanlal, worked with Dhanush, worked with Vijay, worked with Vijay Setupati, and lots of interesting characters, and of course NTR Jr. and now Ram Charan for this film. I did a film called Rapta with Kriti Sanon and Sushant. I did Shiddat now, which was with that Sunny Kaushal and Radhika Madan. So touchwood, I'm not the only person who does underwater sequences. There are a couple of other units which also do, but I'm grateful that I get the work I get, and I'm now definitely able to earn a living doing that kind of work as well as pursue my wildlife and other kinds of advertising and editorial photography.
okay. I mean, it's good to see that a passion turning into a profession. But then, the when we compare it with the wildlife photography,
Hmm.
how do you compare the equipments? I mean, is it more expensive or is it a more expensive passion to
Yeah,
follow?
it certainly is more expensive. When I do wildlife shooting, I'm using a 1DX Mark II camera and a C-cam housing. That setup is no less than 10 or 15 lakhs anyway, so it's not cheap, but that's self-purchase. When we do the feature film work, we are using the cinema cameras, which we don't obviously own. They come from the rental market. So whether we're using the Alexa Mini LF, as Alexa SXT, Red Epic, depending on what the sequence is, how much, what kind of resolution they need, we use these cinema cameras, and they get housed in a much larger housing for cinema housings, and those are also available in the rental market now in India. Touchwood. So earlier it was a big struggle, but now there are two or three agencies who rent the cinema equipment out also. So when there are feature film shoots, we use that. When there is wildlife and nature shoots, I use my still camera, my
Okay.
own setup.
Okay. About the underwater world, I mean, you said when you started your profession, your passion, you used to see very clear water.
Yeah.
And today, the world has moved to a lot of issues in terms of the oceans being polluted, plastic being dumped into the ocean. How do you see the impact of human interference on oceans and the marine life, the life in the
I mean, human
ocean?
impact is huge, to be honest, and devastating. And it is then also into 1997, 2000. In 1997, we started diving. In 1998, there was a very, very bad El Nino current, which caused severe bleaching event all over the Indian Ocean. And that was the first experience of ours of seeing global warming, creating this kind of mass coral bleaching, and many parts of the world were wiped out, and to be honest haven't recovered since then. There have been slow recoveries, and then but there's been more mortality. 2010 there was another major El Nino. 2016-18 there was one more, which they had a lot of news about the Great Barrier Reef getting damaged. So these global warming events, where the warm water currents are getting constantly warmer, the spikes in the temperature are getting higher, and therefore the coral, which is very susceptible to temperature increases, getting bleached, damaged, and killed like that. So that happened early on, as I said, in 1997, 1998. We experienced it for the first time just coming into diving, and today in 2020, 22, we are still experiencing it. Yeah, but I mean, I wish that global warming and coral reef bleaching was the only issue. There are many other issues facing the ocean today, and that is putting everything in a very almost it's a red alert area, catastrophic zone, beyond the tipping point. I must use these kind of adjectives to explain the kind of severity of the problem. And nobody knows beyond a point what is nature's resilience. And at some point, she might snap. And that won't affect her as much as it's going to affect all the millions of humans who rely completely on nature for all our existence. So, I mean, I really feel very strongly about that. So, the other couple of things apart from the global warming causing the warm water coral currents causing global warming, I mean, coral reef bleaching, there's of course severe garbage disposal and other kinds of waste disposal into the ocean, whether it's chemicals and other stuff, which is causing the chemistry of the ocean to change. It's becoming now acidic in nature, the alkaline water, and that is also not good. We all know acidic system is not a healthy system, and that also for the ocean. Then plus also, of course, there's such grotesque amounts of overfishing, both for human consumption, and so much is waste, but through trawling and other destructive practices. So, a combination of overfishing for consumption, garbage disposal as one massive toilet, and global warming causing El Nino spikes, creating global bleaching events, which is causing degradation of the reef together, is having a catastrophical impact on the oceans, as much worse possibly than it was 15, 20 years ago. And yes, the effort to spread awareness is still on, obviously, because you have no choice, you have no second ocean, you have no plan B. One way or the other, you have to get your acts together and deal with the problem.
Talking about the awareness creation, beyond that awareness creation, what do you feel are the steps that one should take to protect our oceans?
Yeah, I
We as
mean,
human beings.
see, as human beings, one has to become aware of the ecosystem, the planet one lives in. One has to become aware of the balance of things, and one's aware of one's basic consumption patterns. You can't keep buying 1 liter bottles of water and throwing it, and that to them, not even throwing it in a disposing it responsibly, just throwing it over the boat into the sea. So, such callous behavior, where you're not at all tuned into the environment, is the first real need of the hour. Once people's attitudes change, automatically their behavior changes. All people who go scuba diving, enjoy the ocean, interact with the ocean without any great formal education will automatically not throw their bottle in the sea. They'll automatically realize this is a area to be preserved. Like you won't go and throw a bottle in the forest when you go to see a tiger. So I mean, awareness raising, the next generation, which is the young people's awareness raising, is most important, because in one generation change, you can't expect change overnight. Change happens over generation to generation sometimes, especially when there are systematic problems which lead to the way we are behaving and reacting. So yes, of course, awareness building, inspiration and awareness building, generating passion and affection for the ocean is the only way to convince somebody to conserve it. And from more scientific terms, of course, people are working with no science and conservation happens without the local communities whose livelihoods are at stake to be addressed. You cannot say stop fishing and not give a alternative livelihood. That is some kind of pseudo armchair conservation, which actually doesn't work. It's counterproductive. So you don't know the reality of the ground. You're not finding any tangible situation, and yet you're sitting from a high horse and preaching. So that doesn't help. So we certainly don't indulge in any of that. We keep our head down. We work on the ground wherever we can. Reforge does what it's doing, whether it's coral reef project in the Andaman, the first of its kind coral reef restoration program, whether it's working with the mega stranding of large marine creatures off the coast of Karnataka, which is now spreading to the coast of Gujarat and Goa, where any marine strandings, mammal, dolphin, turtle, if it can be rescued, will be rescued. They have vets, they have a so you have to do the work. You have to, and we have a lot of education programs with children, educating them through scuba diving, and obviously the general community of scuba divers is constantly growing. Apart from that, I guess there is a little bit of pressure to be put on the government also. You have to constantly put pressure, and a combination of people's awareness and constant pressure putting, and in the meantime doing whatever you can to preserve, conserve, and restore is the way to do it. So that's the way one does our best, basically.
You mentioned about creating an awareness among the next generation. In our channel, also, we keep talking about making the world a greener place for our future generations. You do a lot of activities to educate the younger generation about sustainable living. Can you give us some inputs on that? What are the activities that you do in that direction?
Yeah, well, I mean, they're all centered around children visiting the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, either through a school or as individuals, either for a short volunteer program or a long program. Either way, the first thing they do is they learn scuba diving. They see the ocean firsthand. They see the coral reef firsthand. And once they experience that, they are very inspired, like we all are, and they are very optimistic, and they feel a lot of energy to do something positive. So if you go to a kid in a school in Bombay, tell him to get off his iPad and tell him something, he's not going to listen to you. But when you take him scuba diving and he sees a turtle or he sees a creature, and then you're able to talk to him about those things, he's much more receptive. So we find bringing children away from the city, away from their non-stop addiction to the technology, into nature, to commune with themselves, to commune with the natural surroundings, to go underwater, to find a sense of mental peace and space. These are all very important parts of the education process. And then to inspire them onwards to some action in terms of whether they become aware of, garbage or their own consumption, frankly. And so these are the ways. It's around scuba diving and then educating them around what things they can do. Many of them come back and they are very moved. They have a very serious talks with their parents. They change the way they do garbage segregation in the house. They don't always take their refillable water bottles everywhere. If somebody throws garbage, they'll go out of their way to tell them. And then that guy's become a warden, if you ask me. I'm proud of that guy. He's helping the situation. The more there's peer pressure on people not to litter, will they not litter, to respect. And of course, now the segregation has to happen. We are talking about this all, and then the pandemic happened, and then there were millions of face masks thrown into the sea again over the last 2 years, because we don't know how to cope with all our waste at such high levels. So at the same time that mayhem is happening, at the same time we have the largest ocean patch cleanup program going on now, where they are trying to clean up these large floating continent sizes of ocean garbage in the ocean. So there's a lot of stuff happening, and it's not it is not an easy journey. You have to do your best. You can't be attached to the result, because then you will always find yourself dejected and lose your enthusiasm. You got to believe in your cause and do the work. Leave the result up to whoever. That's the way I feel is the best way to stay motivated.
Scuba diving and underwater photography, being in the film industry, also in the ad industry. Can you give us some brief about a couple of experiences that you would really cherish?
Well, I mean, I've been very fortunate to have this career as I had. First, as I said, my love was scuba diving, so I made it a profession. I became a scuba diving instructor. I spent 15 years as an active scuba diving instructor teaching. During that time, I developed a passion for underwater photography. I spent 10, 15 years honing and mastering those skills with wildlife and then with humans through fashion, editorial, and then through the film business. And it's been very interesting. I find I love all three formats of underwater photography. Nature and wildlife, as I said, is most relaxing, and there's no real great pressure and stress as much as there is on feature film and advertising shoots. Because on a feature film and advertising shoot, there's a very clear brief, ye chahiye, and there's a very clear day. You have to deliver on that day, and that's it. So it's not like wildlife. I went for a dive, I didn't see a turtle, I didn't see anything. It's okay. I'm not disappointed. I went up, I'm done for the day anyway. I'll try again tomorrow. But when you're doing feature and advertising work, there's the need to deliver. That has to register. That is what means to be a professional. That at all costs you have to deliver the result. There's no need for any creative excuse making on why you couldn't deliver. So ultimately, deliver at all cost is the formula of success in a professional industry, and that brings with it its own sense of pressure. And there have been many wonderful occasions also. As I said, working in the feature film industry is you have to train the actors in advance, so they are very well prepared to execute their sequence. And then obviously the filming of it is very streamlined and easy and enjoyable. When you're doing fashion and advertising, editorial based photography, then there's a brief of a final image which one wants, and you have to deliver that final image or not better. So that comes with a different kind of pressure. So advertising photography is different, feature film cinematography is different, and of course wildlife and nature is the most relaxed, unless that also on a brief we need the deliverables, but you have more fluidity about that. So I remember I've had some very amazing instances. I went to shoot for Vogue magazine once with Katrina Kaif in the Philippines, because the idea was to shoot her and a very large marine mammal, and that was the whale shark. So we identified this one place in Philippines, and it's a 24-hour travel, and then a 5-hour boat ride, and then a 1-hour window to get this shot of Katrina Kaif with a whale shark. Now, whale sharks are large, swimming, unpredictable creatures. They are moving. There are currents in the ocean. So the girl, she has to get comfortable with swimming. So there's so much happening, so many moving parts. And then to get an image under that kind of pressure, and then to get a good image, of course, is very, very rewarding and joyful, but high stress. And then I had a very, very pleasant experience recently shooting for RRR. I get to experience some of the best filmmakers in the country when it comes to Rajamouli sir, and to interact with him, see his clarity of vision, see his passion, see his dedication, see his commitment to getting the shot at all cost only inspires you to do better. And both the actors, Ram Charan and NTR, were such thorough gentlemen, although a little anxious of the water. They trained hard, they learned well. We shot for 7 days together, executed a beautiful sequence, which will hopefully be well received when it releases next week. So a lot of fulfillment in days like that. You spend sometimes 12 hours in the swimming pool. It's a long, long hours. It's very draining. By the time you come out, you're exhausted. You sometimes need more than 24 hours to recover, to get the fatigue out of your body. But it's a very rewarding day. And then it's more rewarding when, of course, the people have enjoyed your work, and when you see it out on the big screen. That is the best reward.
Okay. Now coming to your company, Lacadives India.
Yeah.
Can you give us some inputs on what exactly Lacadives do, and what are the plans for the future?
Well, Lacadives is a scuba diving school. It was started in 1995. It was India's first dive school, started by Prahlad Kakkar in the Lakshadweep Islands. I went to visit that school in 97 as a tourist to do my own open water beginners diving course. And needless to say, I told you how hooked I got. And after that, I went back in 98. I spent a lot of time there doing my rescue diver. In 99, I did my dive master in Mauritius. And by the year 2000, I became an instructor and started working with that same firm. Now, 2022, that firm is still alive. It's probably one of the best firms in India still. I'm still very much part of it. I'm one of the managing partners with two others. And now we operate exclusively in the Andamans. We operate for the Taj Exotica Resort. We operate with the CGH Resort, CGH Earth Resort, both on Havelock. We operate a standalone dive center in Chidiya Tapu. We do pool training sessions in Bombay, and we do dive travel by we taking our clients who dive with us in the Andamans to different parts of the world to go diving in the best places, from Galapagos Islands to East Indonesia to Maldives to Egypt, you name it, we've visited. So this is all, Lacadives is born out of the love of the ocean and the love and passion for scuba diving, and to teach that to other people, to bring and share that joy. With that sole purpose was this business born by the founders Prahlad and Mitali. I have had a great honor to be with that firm since the beginning, and then stay with it for over 20 years now, work with it actively, become a partner in it, and try to manage its affairs so that the new generation of dive masters and instructors work with the same passion and integrity as we did, to build a world-class scuba diving brand and to give people a world-class scuba diving experience, a safe experience where they learn correct technique. And we focus all about technique, skill, excellence, because that is what is going to keep you safe. So it's very humble attitude to diving and a very thorough approach to scuba diving training. And we love and respect our clients. So this is our ethos. It's always been with us for the last 25 years. And I'm very grateful that the firm has grown. And when all these large hotels came into the Andamans, from all the 50 dive shops in the country they could have chosen, they all chose Lacadives to be their hotel, their scuba diving partner. And that is a great honor for us and a great privilege. And now we are, as I said, executing our operations in these hotels for them. And more people are coming to the water and diving, and that is a great privilege for us. And so in future generation, for the future, there are a lot of plans to expand in the Andamans more. Wherever we are asked to operate, we will operate. We also want to keep opening up new areas and new markets. So as and when opportunity beckons, we will go. And of course, we would like to revisit the Lakshadweep Islands, where our entire journey began. Our company is called Lacadives, which is the British name for the Lakshadweep Islands, the Lacadives. So it's only prudent, and that's where we all began. So we would love to be back there operating again, and hopefully in the future we will be.
Very, very clear words conveying what Lacadives stand for.
Thank you,
Very,
sir.
very clear words. That's good. Now, I mean, this underwater photography is a very expensive passion, which we mentioned earlier.
It can be.
Yeah. Now, if an youngster wants, an aspiring youngster who wants to come into this field, what will be a message to the youngsters?
See, Baba, if you find a field you're passionate about, then you got to pursue that passion and follow through with it. Now, in terms of underwater photography today, there's so much more information. You can sharpen your learning curve much faster. Yes, scuba diving is expensive. Yes, to buy underwater photography equipment, which is a camera, lensing, housing, dome pot, strobe lights, video lights, is lots of investments. Traveling to go anywhere with all this equipment and then to go shoot and all, and there's no market, there's no sales. So beyond a point, yes, it does get limiting. Therefore, you can't, I mean, if you're got good pockets, you love it as a hobby and a profession, obviously you keep persevering with your hobby and try to improve your hobby to the best of your ability. And that is why hobbies are there, something to do extracurricular which you enjoy doing, which balance out your work life. Everybody may not be as fortunate to make a hobby into a profession. Now, if you want to do that, you have to stick it out. As I said, I started when I'm 21, I'm 46 today. So there are 20 years of struggle in this, which I was unrecognized. I was not getting work. I was spending more money than I was certainly earning. And there may have been bouts of doubt. There may have been bouts of, I won't go as far as to say depression, but definitely feeling of anxiety, that is this going to click? Is this going to work? It's a very niche field. There's not enough work in underwater photography. There's already a predecessor in the market getting the work. How do I get work? How do I prove myself? How do I get a break? How do I get an opportunity? So these things go through your mind as you sit on the sidelines and watch other people, and you're not getting those opportunities. Where it made me hungrier. It made me hungrier to succeed. I will get past all obstacles. I believed in myself and my skill set. I developed my skill set extensively. I believe that I have the most skill with a camera underwater, and nobody can manage a camera like me, because I've spent 20 years doing it. And therefore, if I'm going to bring that skill and passion to the table, then surely I have a chance to do well. I just needed to get a break. And as I said, so it takes a lot of perseverance. Stick with it. There are so many people who write. Some youngsters come and assist me, and I'm happy to help and teach people always. But I don't paint any rosy fake picture. Ki, you come, you work with me. 1 year later, you'll be doing your work. You won't be doing your work. There's limited underwater work. I'm still working. You have to. There's a pool of people already working. Now you have to add yourself to that pool. Build a name to get the work. It's hard. It is challenging. So I'm going to be conducting my own underwater photography workshops now in the future to train people professionally to work with me and my unit in my own pool studio, which I've developed in Alibag, and then on my projects, and hopefully train a second or third line of cameramen who are skilled in underwater out of my own fold. So it may continue even once I stop doing it. But there are a handful of world-class operators in the world. Even in Hollywood, there's literally one operator who's the key operator, and he does 85% of all the films, right? And even though there are many others in the sideline. So, like Prahlad once told me, 80% of the work goes to 10% of the people, or in fact he said 90% of the work goes to 10% of the people, and the other 10% of the work 90% of the people have to fight for. So you decide what you want to be. If you want to get the work, you have to be the best. So all you have to do all the time is focus on being the best and being as good, your best. You may not become the best, but at least do your best. That is also important, right? So these were good lessons I was taught early, and there was no way I was going to turn my back and say, "Chalo, ye nahi chal raha hai, aur kuch karega." Yes, I've done other things. I set up a resort in the Andamans, which I'm running along with my partner Prahlad. I'm running the dive businesses, but the passion and frankly the money comes from the underwater photography and cinematography work. The other businesses are draining my money, to be honest.
Thanks a lot, Sumer. It was really inspiring to talk to you. I mean, I've done conversations with a lot of people who have followed their passion, but then turning that passion into profession, making a living out of it, it's very few people. I mean, it's really good to see that. Wishing you
Thank
all the very best for your all your ventures. Looking forward to interact and connect with you more often. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on your show, and lovely talking to you. And hopefully one day we'll see each other. I'd love to take you diving in the Andamans personally and show you what's hiding below.
Looking forward. Looking forward.